Hello, good morning, lovely people. I know this is a very strange way for us to meet, but of course, I wanted to make sure that we were able to keep up with our reading and give you all a sense of, things going on as normal, considering what we are all going through. I first want to just say that I hope you all are well. I hope you're safe. I hope that your families are well. And if you feel like you need someone to talk to or need to vent, you are always welcome to drop me an email. I'm more than happy to take some time out of my day to respond to your messages if that is what you need. So today, though we are not meeting in class, as you can clearly see, I will be sharing my lesson with you in this format for now. This is the first go around for me. I will be uploading and having other options for more video face-to-face things, but I wanted to get this kind of rough edit out to you all as quickly as possible. So please bear with me. As I mentioned, it is rough, it is unedited, so there won't be a lot of razzle dazzle here. We'll save that for another time. So, on our agenda today, we are actually going to continue reading Seedfolks. That's the book that we started to read not too long ago. We are a few chapters in. I believe the last chapter we read was Wendell. And if you remember, he is that older character who is the friend of that very nosy neighbor, Anna. He, I believe, is a custodian at a school. He had a son and a wife, but tragically, both are no longer with him due to accidents that have happened. Today, we're going to read Gonzalo and Leona, those chapters in Seedfolks. And if you can recall, this book is all centered around the start of planting lima beans from our first character, Kim. So the first few slides will just be reading aloud. I know it's not really that exciting, but I'll try to make it as exciting as possible. And while I'm reading, I hope that you guys will take some time on a piece of paper or in your notes section on your phone just to jot down some of your thoughts about what you hear. My plan is to have a Kahoot uploaded for you guys to answer comprehension questions. So I'll make that into a interesting game that you all can play to kind of test your comprehension. And then we'll talk about another option a little later. It's my secret surprise. So I'm going to go ahead and begin reading with the understanding that one, I am in my own home. Two, that means that we may be interrupted or there may be some loud noises. So if that happens, I'm sorry. We will make the best of it, okay? Also, just as a side note, I hope to have a PDF copy of these two chapters attached to the message that you'll receive about this. So this way, if you are someone who's very visual and needs to see the words versus hearing it, I will try to make that option available to you as well. All right. Cool beans. Let's get started. I'm sure if this was a YouTube video, I'd be super animated. That's just a side note. So let's get started for realsies this time. All right. So Gonzalo's chapter begins on page 17. The older you are, the younger you get when you move to the United States. They don't teach you that equation in school. Big brain Mr. Schmaltz, my 8th grade math teacher, hasn't even heard of it. It's not in Gateway to Algebra. It's the Garcia equation. And I'm the Garcia. 2 years after my father and I moved here from Guatemala, I could speak English. I learned it on the playground and watching lots of TV. Don't believe what people say. Cartoons make you smart. But my father, he worked all day in the kitchen with Mexicans and Salvadorans. His English was worse than a kindergartner's. He would only buy food at the bodega down the block. Outside of there, he lowered his eyes and tried to get by on mumbles and smiles. He didn't want strangers to hear his mistakes. So when he used me to make phone calls and to talk with the landlady and to buy things in stores where you had to use English, he got younger and I got older. Then my younger brothers and my mother and Tio Juan and her uncle came north and joined us. Tio Juan was the oldest man in his pueblo. But here he became a little baby. He'd been a farmer, but here he couldn't work. He couldn't sit out in the plaza and talk. There aren't any plazas here. And if you sit out in public, some gang driving by might use you for target practice. He couldn't understand TV, so he wandered around the apartment all day, in and out of rooms, talking to himself, just like a kid in diapers. One morning, he wandered outside and down the street. My mother practically fainted. He doesn't speak Spanish, just an Indian language. I found him standing in front of the beauty parlor, staring through the glass at a woman with a dryer over her head. He must have wondered what weird planet he moved to. I led him home, holding his hand the way you would a 3-year-old, since I'm supposed to babysit him after school. One afternoon, I was watching TV, getting smart on the Brady Bunch. Suddenly, I looked up. He was gone. I checked the halls on all 5 floors of the apartment house. I ran to the street. He wasn't in the bodega or the pawn shop. I called his name, imagining my mother's face when she found out he'd fallen through a manhole or been run over. I turned the corner looking for a white straw hat he always wore. 2 blocks down, I spotted it. I flew down the sidewalk and found him standing in front of a vacant lot, making gestures to a man with a shovel. I took his hand, but he pulled me through the trash and into the lot. I recognized the man with the shovel. He was the janitor at my old school. He had a little garden planted. Different shades of green leaves were coming up in rows. Tio Juan was smiling and trying to tell him something. The man couldn't understand him and finally went back to digging. I turned Tio Juan around and led him home. That night, he told my mother all about it. She was the only one who could understand him. When she got home from work the next day, she asked me to take him back there. I did. He studied the sun, then the soil. He felt it, then he smelled it. Then he actually tasted it. Blech. He chose a spot not too far from the sidewalk. Where my mother changed buses, she'd gone into a store and bought him a trowel and 4 packets of seeds. I cleared the trash. He turned the soil. I wish we were further from the street, and I was praying that none of my friends or girlfriends or enemies saw me. Tio Juan didn't even notice people. He was totally wrapped up in the work. He showed me exactly how far apart the rows should be and how deep. He couldn't read the words on the seed packets, but he knew from the pictures what seeds were inside. He poured them into his hand and smiled. He seemed to recognize them like old friends. Watching him carefully sprinkle them into the trowels he made, I realized that I didn't know anything about growing food and that he knew everything. I stared at his busy fingers, then his eyes. They were focused, not far away or confused. He changed from a baby back into a man. So that was Gonzalo's chapter. And I don't know about you all, but I can definitely relate to this character a lot. I too had siblings growing up and I was responsible for them. And I was always afraid that I would get into trouble if they got into trouble. The difference here is that Gonzalo was actually responsible for an adult. And he's responsible for that adult because he has a skill set that some in his household don't have, which is being able to speak English well enough to communicate with others. Now, this character is really interesting because I think he brings a wealth of youth to the chapter, something that you can relate to, having girlfriends and boyfriends, having, quote, enemies, though I don't know if we can really call them enemies so much as maybe people we don't really like. And just the sense of embarrassment because he understands that planting in a garden is not necessarily a cool thing to do. Um, but nevertheless, I think that he recognizes that he thought he had a lot of skills, thought he knew a lot of things, and thought that he was much more mature. But then when the situation is reversed, he notices that he doesn't know as much as he believed he did. So I think that was really interesting that this particular story changed so drastically. I want to take a moment here just to kind of pause before we go into the next chapter. So there's going to be about 15 or 20 seconds of silence just so you all can get settled, find the new chapter, and get ready. Okay, so I hope that you have Leona's chapter in front of you now because we are going to read it. I am trying really hard not to insert too many of my side notes because I need to make this recording short so that way it uploads. So I'm sorry if you are looking for my usual antics and thoughts and about annotation as I go through it and you're not getting it. It's not because I don't want to do it. It's just that I want to make sure that this file is not too large in case you are downloading it or viewing it from your phones. Okay, so that's a side note. So we're going to jump into Leona. I really love this one. It's super sweet, you guys. Oh, feels. Okay, here we go. Mama believed in doctors, but not Granny. Not even if they were black. No, ma'am. I grew up in her house back in Atlanta. She'd drink down a big cup of goldenrod tea every morning with a nutmeg floating in it and declared she didn't need no other medicine. Dr. Bates tried to sell her his iron pills and told her straight out that that tea of hers would raise her blood pressure and burst her heart. Well, he passed away that very same summer. Next doctor said it would give her brain fever. He died on his 50th birthday, I believe, right during the party. Had him a real nice funeral later. Granny lived to be 99 by her count. She kept a scrapbook with the obituaries of all the doctors she outlived and could recite the list of names by heart, like a chapter out of Genesis. We took to going to their funerals right regular over the years. She always laid some goldenrod on their graves. Okay, Granny is shady. I'm sorry. I know I wasn't supposed to insert that, but she's shady, and I'm here for it. All right, back to the story. I was thinking about her one day walking home from the grocery store on Gibbs Street. Then I came into the vacant lot and saw 3 people in different parts of it. I thought maybe they were looking for money. Turned out they had shovels, not metal detectors. When I saw they had little gardens going, I said to myself, I believe I'll plant me a patch of goldenrod right here. There was a man standing and watching from the sidewalk and a girl looking down out a window. There were probably lots of folks who'd want to grow something just like me. Then I studied all the trash on the ground. Don't know why anyone called that lot vacant. The garbage was piled high as your waist, some of it from the neighborhood and some dropped off by outside people. The ones who don't want to pay at the dump or got dangerous chemicals or think we're such slobs down here, we won't mind another load of junk. We can't get City Hall to pick up our trash, but we got it delivered just fine. The smell's enough to curl up a crocodile's nose, especially in the summer. The gardeners made some trails through it, but I knew precious few would join them until that mess was hauled away. Looking at it, I knew this wasn't a job for no wheelbarrow. This was a job for the telephone. Okay, sis. I marched on home. I got two kids in high school that has more guns and books. So I know all about complaining to officials and such about things that need changing. Next morning was Monday. At 9 o'clock, I drank me a tall glass of water. I knew I'd be having to say the same thing to 15 or 20 government folks. I put Miles on the CD player and stretched out on the bed. Might as well be comfortable when you're on hold. Then I opened up the phone book and started dialing. You ever watch a sax player close? They push down a key and way at the other end of the instrument something moves. That's what I was looking for. The key that would make the trash disappear. I tried the city of Cleveland, then Cuyahoga County, then the state of Ohio, and finally the US government. 6.5 hours later, I found out the lot was owned by the city. But the people running Cleveland don't usually come down here unless they take a wrong turn on the freeway. You can't measure the distance between my block and City Hall in miles. Just the same, I kept working on it the next day. That Citizens Information Center told me to call the public health department. They sent me to someone else. They're all trained to be slippery as snakes. And to be out to lunch or not to return messages, and to keep folks on hold till they get gray and die. I had the feeling I was getting further from the key I needed instead of closer. Then on the third day, I thought on it. When people talk to you on the phone, you're nothing but a voice. And when you're on hold, you're not even that. I had to make myself real to them. That morning, I took a bus downtown and walked into the public health department, told about the trash all over again to this dolled up receptionist. Let her see me close up and personal and hear me loud and clear. She told me to sit down with the others waiting. I did. Then I opened up the garbage bag I picked up in the lot on my way in. The smell that came out of it made you think of hog pens and maggots and kitchen scraps from back when Nixon was president. Sounds like it stinks. It was amazing how quick people noticed it, including that receptionist. And even more amazing how quick I was called in to have a meeting with someone. I was definitely real to them now. I brought that bag along with me into the meeting to keep it that way. Child. Okay. So Leona, she doesn't play any games. She's just like her grandma, shady. And once again, I am absolutely here for it. Okay. So that concludes the 2 chapters we are going to be reading today. However, there is a next step for you guys. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so now that you have listened to those last 2 chapters that I've just read, I want to give you some homework. And obviously I'm calling this homework because we're all at home right now. We would be doing this in class together, but since we are unable to do so, I'm going to assign it to you. And what I'm asking you to do, the required task, is that you answer the comprehension questions via Kahoot. I've made the link available in the email that you have received. So all you need to do is pretty much click on that link. It will take you directly to the Kahoot questions, and you will answer those the same way you would if we were in class and utilizing your phones. Okay, so that's the first task. The second task is optional, but I hope that everyone will actually do this task. And it is to think of one open-ended question that you would like to ask about Seedfolks and email it to me at lahall@ccp.edu. It's right there on the screen if you did not catch it completely. And I want you to remember that open-ended questions cannot be answered with a simple yes or no or other one-word responses. They really require some deep thinking, some deep thought, and for you to actually verbalize why you feel the way that you feel. So open-ended questions begin with words like why or how. So I encourage you to think about a question using why or how and email me that question as it relates to Seedfolks. So those are the two things at the top of the list. A bonus item, I want you guys to imagine me doing spirit fingers there. A bonus option is that I am planning to have a Google Hangout session to go over these comprehension questions with you. I'm not sure when exactly that Google Hangout session will be. It depends on how quickly we get these lessons out to you. But once this lesson comes out and I know that it's out, I'll plan the Google Hangout for that following week. If you'd like to join me for it, please just send me an email still here on the screen, from your preferred email address. And when I say preferred, I mean the one that you check the most often and the one that you have consistent access to. I will email you an invitation to join me once the date is set. Again, you need to email me from your preferred email address, and then I'll send you an invitation once I have the date set. If for whatever reason you're not able to join us, that is a-okay. I'll look into some options to record the Google Hangout so that folks have access to it even if they're not able to join us. But my first preference would be that everyone is able to join us for that Google Hangout. So we'll see how it goes. So thank you so much for actually listening to this lesson, remaining engaged. I know this is a very difficult time for many of us and very challenging to be home every single day. But I hope that you all are staying safe, that you're being kind to each other or those that you love. And I really hope to see you all soon, if not in person, then definitely via Google Hangout. Have a beautiful day, beautiful people.